and welcome to the final Frasier Fridays of 2023. And what last video of the year would be complete without a top 10 list? So, for your viewing pleasure, we're going to go over my top 10 new television seasons for 2023. A quick disclaimer before we get into it. I haven't had a chance to watch The Boys Gen V, The Continental, Dark Winds Season 2, or the new season of Bosch Legacy yet. So, if they were all really good, sorry, but they're not going to be included here. First, I want to start out with 3 honorable mentions. So technically, I guess that makes this list a top 13. The Bear returned for a second season this year. The restaurant drama starring Jeremy Allen White got a ton of praise for its first season last year, and it was all really well deserved. The second season is still good, though not quite as good as the first season. In the first season, we had an overarching storyline, whereas this time around, they chose to focus more on vignettes with each individual character. It really fleshed out some of the additional cast, but it left a lot of the cast we had more from in the first season feeling underserved here. My second honorable mention is the second season of Joe Picket. The show follows the adventures of the titular game warden, and it premiered as a Spectrum original series in 2021. So I don't think a lot of people saw it in its original run. Paramount Plus picked it up for its second and final season. Thanks to the Paramount Plus production, the animals look a lot better this time out, and the show moved forward at a good pace. It's just a shame it's not going to get a third season. And my final honorable mention is Animal Control, the Joel McHale workplace comedy. It isn't a fantastic show, but it's a lot of fun. And the animal plot lines each episode were just ridiculous enough to leave me with quite a few laughs each week. I don't know that this show will ever go down as a classic, but it's got a second season coming out in March, and I enjoy Joel McHale's acting enough, I'll definitely be checking it out. Now into the actual top 10. Number 10 is the second season of The Lincoln Lawyer. Michael Connelly's Lincoln Lawyer series is one of my favorite book series, and the Netflix adaptation of the shows have been pretty good. They've trimmed out a few things here and there that I would have preferred they kept in, and added a few unnecessary sex scenes, but otherwise, the shows have been about as close to the books as I could have possibly hoped. The actors are all well cast, and almost every week there's a little bonus case that happens in each episode, which makes for the exact kind of courtroom drama I love to watch. At number 9, we have Archer. We talked a bit about this last week. Archer is a comedy that is smarter and more self-aware than it really has any right to be. It's had some missteps here and there, especially in the middle of the series, but for the last few seasons, it's really returned to form, and it pulled off a strong enough ending for the series for me to think well of it. Number 8 is Lucky Hank. Bob Odenkirk's follow-up to Better Call Saul isn't near as good as its predecessor, but as with The Lincoln Lawyer, I like courtroom dramas. So, without the lawyer trappings, it wasn't going to be as strong for me. The series follows Bob Odenkirk's Hank as the chair of his college's department, where he has a midlife crisis. The show threads kind of a weird line between being almost a family drama and a dramedy. There's a lot of nice moments here, some very raw emotions for Bob Odenkirk, and excellent acting all around. At number 7, we have Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. The show I didn't know I wanted, but I'm very glad we got. The trailers make it look like it's a straight-up adaptation of the Scott Pilgrim graphic novels, which would have been fun and what I thought I was getting myself into. The movie was actually written before the series was finished, and the endings are pretty different because of this, so I was looking forward to a more traditional adaptation of it. Instead, what we ended up getting is more of a sequel to the comics than an adaptation. I don't want to spoil it at all, but it's a very well done show. The art is similar enough to Brian Lee O'Malley's graphic novels, and the zany plot lines are just out there enough without getting too weird to make for a perfectly enjoyable miniseries. At number 6, we have the final season of Doom Patrol. If it wasn't for the finale, this wouldn't be as high on my list, but Doom Patrol really managed to stick the landing. This series was easily my favorite show in 2019 when it debuted, and I adore the first season. When production got shut down in the second season in 2020, the end of that season felt a little rushed, but it was still great. From there, it just sort of got a little stale for me. The first 6 episodes of this season before the break were mediocre, but the last handful were great and showcased Doom Patrol at the heights of its quirkiness. This season had one of the stronger season finales I've ever seen, and easily the saddest one of the year. The last time I remember choking up at a TV show like this was during the penultimate episode of BoJack Horseman. Doom Patrol was a fantastic, zany show that I still can't really believe got made. If you're interested in an extremely heartfelt show where Brendan Fraser plays a robot, Timothy Dalton is a warped version of Professor X, and a sentient transvestite Street is a recurring character, I can't recommend Doom Patrol highly enough. My number 5 is another second season, with the return of Steve Dildurran's 10-Year-Old Tom. This is Dildurran's second series I've watched, following his previous animated HBO series, The Life and Times of Tim. This series could easily be called 10-Year-Old Tim, and no one would bat an eye. This is just a 10-year-old version of the character from his previous show. The art has a childish, almost unfinished look to it, although it's a lot more polished here than we saw it on The Life and Times of Tim, and the humor is dry, but it really works. There's a litany of A-list stars on this series, including David Duchovny, Gillian Jacobs, and John Malkovich. The voice acting is great, and Dildurran's deadpan delivery, whenever anything goes wrong, always leaves me cracking up. If you like very dry, somewhat adult humor, this show and its companion show, The Life and Times of Tim, are a must-watch. My number 4 is the last animated show on the list, and only aired 4 episodes and 1 special this year, and that's Invincible. I really can't say enough good things about this show. I've pretty much dropped out of watching both Marvel and DC productions, with a few exceptions like Doom Patrol and Harley Quinn. They're all pretty much the same and don't really offer you anything new. Invincible, on the other hand, is a breath of fresh air. Yes, it's got your standard superhero fare going on, but it's so much more than that. The characters are all fleshed out and have personal tragedies and issues to deal with. Their motivations and choices are clear, and there's actual character growth. All the while, there's also ridiculous comic bookiness, like alternate realities and the ever-cloning Mauler twins. From someone who is pretty burned out on superheroes in general, I love this show and can't wait for more of it. My number 3 is probably the biggest surprise for me on this list. I went into this with zero expectations and ended up loving the heck out of it, and that's the Muppets Mayhem. After the 2015 ABC Muppets show being not at all what I wanted, and the last couple Muppets movies being okay but nothing great, I had zero expectations for a Muppets project, and I was overjoyed with what Disney put out here. The Muppets Mayhem was full of songs, guest stars, heart, and just the right balance of humans and Muppets interacting. It was everything I could have possibly wanted out of a Muppets production, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the best new Muppets project to come out in at least 15 years. It's great for kids and adults alike, and if you have any love for music, it's packed with more references than you can shake a Bon Jovi ad. A great time all around, and the best theme song of the year. My number 2 was also my second favorite show last year. And if the quality continues, I predict it will be in my top 5 for the next 3 years, and that's Yellow Jackets. The slightly supernatural horror thriller about a girls' soccer team who became stranded in the wilderness for 18 months, and their adult counterparts 20-odd years later, threads just the right line between thriller, teen drama, and domestic drama. The first season left us with a lot of questions, and the second season didn't answer that many of them. But it answered just enough I felt like the plot moved forward decently. The most frustrating thing with this show is it's divided up pretty equally between the present and the past. So it's like you're only getting half a season of each storyline at a time. It makes it a really slow burn. Things escalated some in this season, but honestly, not as much as I was expecting. I know this was pitched as a 5-season storyline, so I'm very excited to see where it goes in the future, and what is in store for our young cast. One quick fun fact of interest from this show before we get to my number 1. The actress who plays Teen Misty, they also played young Chuck in Pushing Daisies. Considering Pushing Daisies is a 15-year-old show, I think it's incredible that Hanratty is still pulling in teen roles at this point in her career. And my number one show is one I actually went into with some skepticism. I'd enjoyed some of the creator's works, but not all of it. In fact, his Star Wars movie I thought was one of the worst ones, and I checked out of watching new Star Wars after it. With that said, while I don't find Rian Johnson to be a compelling voice in the Star Wars universe, he is right at home with quirky murder mysteries. And that's exceptionally the case with Poker Face. This show is basically a callback to the 70s classic Mystery of the Week shows like Magnum PI, The Rockford Files, or Columbo. Each episode starts out with a crime happening, and then we get to see our main character solve it. There's a small, overarching plotline going on, but it doesn't matter. And honestly, after setting it up for her to stay on the run in season 2, I'd be perfectly happy if we never see anything for the overarching plotline again. The show hits just the right tone of wacky humor, over-the-top characters, and strange criminal cases to be the perfect cozy mystery show. I love every minute of it, and it's really close to a perfect 10 out of 10 in my book for the first season. If the second season keeps the quality as well as the first one did, I wouldn't hesitate in calling it one of those rare 10 out of 10 television shows. And that's it for me for 2023. I hope everyone has a wonderful new year and enjoys the time with friends and family. We'll be back to regular Frasier reviews and analysis next week. Until then, take care everyone.